The Winnipeg Jets have booked their playoff tickets, things are ready to go, and the Jets are just waiting to find out whether they play Vegas or Edmonton. We're going to dive into 3 reasons why the Jets can advance in the postseason and 3 reasons why they're going to struggle, all coming right up on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. As always, thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform of choice, including Apple, Spotify, Google, Megaphone, Odyssey, and YouTube. Doing so is, of course, completely free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode, but most of all, we just really love and appreciate your support. Now, like I said at the top of the episode, tonight we're going to focus on how the Jets can advance and how they can, find themselves getting knocked out, especially in the first round or so. Obviously, this team, as it is right now, is still not quite complete. The Jets are still down Perfetti. We've had some guys who have been getting a few knocks here and there over the past couple of games, and so the Jets are just trying to make it through the end of the regular season this week and hopefully get some rest as they prepare for the first round opponents either in Vegas or in Edmonton, right? Now, neither of these teams are going to be easy outs. We all know this. We talked about it last episode. I said that my preference personally is probably Vegas. I think the Knights might be the most balanced team that the Jets could face between them and the Oilers. I know people will say, well, the Oilers are a team the Jets have swept. Their goaltending is suspect. That's a team where the Jets can take advantage of some matchup issues. And that is true about part of the way. The other part is Connor McDavid kind of being unstoppable. And when McDavid is kind of feeling it and he's on one, I think that really presents a bit of a mismatch, especially talent-wise, for Winnipeg's entire roster. So all of that to say that, the Knights are a very strong team and actually might play better overall than the Oilers do, but Edmonton has the most lethal finishing of any team out there. So in a 7-game series, sometimes that finishing talent is all you need to get by, especially when that finishing talent is attached to names like McDavid, Draisaitl, Yamamoto, and a number of other fantastic players. But like I said, I think there are 3 reasons why the Jets will advance and 3 reasons why they're not going to. Let's talk about why the Jets will advance. The key number 1 reason for the Jets to make the playoffs and actually advance is going to be Connor HelleBuck. And is that any surprise? This guy has been Winnipeg's rock since day one, and I think we all know, at the end of the day, the Jets kind of live or die by HelleBuck. It's been their mantra for many years. We've seen it in practice. Thankfully, this year, it's a little more balanced, right? The Jets actually play some reasonably decent hockey. It's not perfect. It's not always pretty. But you know what? It's a heck of a lot better than it was a couple of seasons ago. Like, the Jets just being like an average team when you kind of break everything down is a refreshing change of pace. That's how bad the last few years have been. Now, the power play obviously is a little bit worse than average. In fact, it's just dog crap half the time. But, I mean, as long as the Jets can nab at least a few power play goals to supplement the even strength scoring, that'd be very convenient. I think Ehlers going on that first unit has made a noticeable impact. It hasn't fixed the power play, but it's been better. And all of that is going to be really important for the Jets, especially because HelleBuck, he might or might not be immortal. I don't know. We find out on a game-by-game basis whether he's in full Vezina form or more, of the slightly average-ish starter that most goalies are, right? Even HelleBuck's worst games, though, tend to be, again, average performances for other goalies. They fall in line with what you would expect most people to surrender. So for me, I think HelleBuck at the end of the day, is still the guy that you put your money on. If you are hoping for one player to really stand above the rest, your superstar who can carry this franchise through at least a round, it's got to be Helly. I mean, this guy has been there since the beginning of the season. He was already putting on a show once again when this year kicked off. Last year, I think his numbers were better than people realized, especially with how bad the Jets were. This year, they look a little more normal by most goalie standards, but the reality is Hellebuck is still one of this league's top performers, especially when it comes to dealing with a whole slew of chances, having such an intense workload, and quite honestly, sitting behind a Jets defense that, in past years, wasn't exactly resolute. Now, I think Hellebuck is going to have some issues if they face the Knights. Vegas has a style of game that I think really puts the Jets under a lot of pressure, and Hellebuck can only handle so much before eventually he concedes. Winnipeg is going to have to be very sharp and disciplined. I think the Jets really need to stay out of the penalty box. I mean, that's obvious, but part of the reason the Jets kind of take penalties is because their players get caught flat-footed on rapid counters. So this is a really important time for the Jets to smarten up, stay disciplined, and make sure that their number one reason for making the playoffs and advancing faces as few scoring opportunities as the Jets can manage. But we all know the playoffs probably going to be a lot of Hellebuck, a very big dose. Now, Helly is on the verge of history. I believe he is on track right now to win the first 17 playoff games of a franchise's existence in this case. And so for Helly, that would be amazing. It really shows how much he's been a pivotal member of this team and part of the reason why the Jets have been able to advance or even make the playoffs in a number of these seasons. So congrats to him. He's on the verge of history. Now it's time to not only make history, but improve upon it with some really good play from the Jets. Now, that was one reason why Winnipeg can advance, right? I have a couple of other reasons, though, that I think Winnipeg maybe, should get a little bit of credit for. I think this team is better than people realize in some areas, and also in other areas, not as good. Before we dive into all of that, though, I do want to shout out our friends and partners at Built. Obviously, you've heard me talk about Built before, especially those of you who are longtime listeners, but if you have no idea what I'm talking about, Built Bars are the only protein bars that taste more like a candy bar. They are coated in 100% real dark chocolate, and they come with a soft, chewy interior. They come in great flavors like cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie, churro. One of my personal favorites is raspberry dark chocolate. Very simple, very classic, very well executed. And best of all, Built Bars are super healthy for you. Most clock in at around 130 calories, 4 grams of net carbs, and anywhere from 14 to 17 grams of protein. So if you're looking for something before your next workout, an afternoon snack, or just a bit of a sweet treat that makes you feel a little bit less guilty than all of those full fat and calorie candy bars, Built Bar is there for you. You can pick them up at Walmart or Sam's Club in preset variety boxes, or choose your own special favorites at Built.com when you try their variety box as well. Be sure to give Built Bar a try. I promise you, you will not regret it. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are rejoining the discussion on how the Jets can advance and how the Jets can fall out of the playoffs, especially in the early goings. We said the number one reason the Jets will advance is because Connor Hellebuck is Connor Hellebuck. If he's on full Vezina form, you can't touch him. But assuming that, that may not always be the case, how else can the Jets advance? What is going to be the key for them? I think for reason, like a reason number two for the Jets to advance, it's going to come down to just being better defensively. I know it sounds very silly, but this year's Jets, for the most part, defend pretty well. I know that they don't exactly, defend their own blue line specifically. Zone entries and certainly zone possession against the Jets continues to be a problem. But in other areas, like where the Jets are conceding high danger chances from, how often they're doing so, the Jets are actually doing pretty darn good this year. They're one of the top, I would say top 10 or top 15 defensive structures out there, which is good for the Jets. We know that in previous years, the space in front of Hellebuck was literally a welcome mat that said, score here. This year, it's been a lot tighter, and while Rick Bowness has kind of sacrificed offense as a result, the defensive work and the details that the Jets have been missing in previous years, I can accept that trade-off so long as it doesn't kill all of the goal scoring. But There is one third reason that I think the Jets could really go through, and it kind of feeds into this whole Winnipeg needing to be more offensively ambitious and not just focus on defense, right? I'm looking at Nikolai Ehlers in this playoff series, whichever one the Jets are going to be involved with. I think he's going to have to be the guy who Winnipeg allows to lead the way. I know that Scheifele, of course, will be motivated and probably giving 110% on his shifts. He's looked a lot more lively and engaged recently. But if there's one player that I think can really change the scope of the game and affect it at a level that most of the other Jets can, it's got to be Ehlers. The problem with Nick is that for some reason, Bonus doesn't really like to give him ice time. So, reason number 3 for the Jets to advance is kind of, in some ways, built in with some conditions. The primary one being that Ehlers actually plays for more than 10 minutes a night. I'm exaggerating slightly, but in terms of how he stacks against other Winnipeg top 9 forwards, unfortunately, Ehlers always comes up very short, sometimes about the same time as the fourth line, and he is not a fourth line player. He's not a third line player. He is a top 6, top line elite forward. I would look at every other team out there, and they probably watch Ehlers and basically drool all over themselves. They would give everything to have somebody who is this talented and this creative. Does Ehlers have problems defensively? No question. I think that has been a recurring theme with him, and the reason that it's not a problem is because Ehlers has always played his game to be very possession dominant, right? And what does that mean when you are up the ice and controlling the puck? That means that the space in front of Hellebuck at the other end, ain't no one going to be there. If you can keep the puck up the ice, that is defense through offense. And I think in a lot of ways, Ehlers is kind of, for me, the archetype that I think the Jets should really focus on. Skill that can control the puck, control the pace, and dial up amazing plays with unbelievable creativity. That really is what defines Ehlers and what I hope the Jets can define with future players that they end up picking up through drafts and stuff. But, I think those 3 reasons, of course, for me, put the Jets in a better position to advance, but it may not end up being that way. I think we all know how the Jets have been at times. For as much as it was a fun ride making the postseason, Winnipeg did kind of lean a little too heavily on Hellebuck, and at times we also saw a lack of finishing being a real problem. But thankfully, like I said, the defensive structure of this team has generally improved. We've seen some new line combos recently that appear to be working pretty decently, and it's not like Winnipeg's recent opponents have been slouches. The Jets have faced some very quality opponents in teams like the New Jersey Devils, the Minnesota Wild, some opponents like that, plus some teams that are tanking, but we're going to pretend those don't exist. The main ones that we want to focus on are Winnipeg's quality wins. And so if I had to choose a percentage odd that I think the Jets maybe get out of round 1, I'm going to say I think it's about a 55% chance, just arbitrarily. Again, the number doesn't really mean anything, but I do feel like because Hellebuck can be Hellebuck, that might be enough to push the Jets just slightly over the edge. But it's going to be a really tight series. Should the Jets face Vegas, I think it would take 6 games. If the Jets were to face, say, the Oilers, that's probably going to be 7 games. I think Edmonton's offense is scary enough to where I think they have the ability to easily force a Game 7 if the Jets are not careful. So a lot to consider, but one of the other things that I did want to consider is a set of reasons as to why the Jets might not survive the first couple of rounds of the playoffs. We know in some areas why that might happen, but I think there are some other ones that are worth spotlighting. We'll dive into that in just a little bit, but before we go any further, I do want to shout out our friends and partners at Gametime. Buying tickets these days comes with all sorts of fees, a lot of hassle. You've got to search for the best deals, and half the time, the tickets you buy might not even be all that inexpensive. In fact, you might not even be getting the best prices, which is a huge pain in the butt. It's a lot of stress, and you need something that's a lot easier to work with and always guarantees you the best deal possible. That's why you need to download the Gametime app. Browse through the Gametime app and talk about all of the wonderful things that you can find, including flash deals, last-minute ticket deals, and all sorts of great things. They've got plenty of events in your area. They will always have images of nearby seat rows, so if you want to see what your view is going to look like, Gametime is there for you. They've also got a lowest price guarantee, and they've got event cancellation protection, and of course, many other protections so that no matter what your circumstances are, if you can't make the event, Gametime has your back. It is the place for last minute deals, including stuff right on the day of the event. And again, you don't have to worry about planning months in advance. Gametime can give you the best deal when you need it on demand. And right now, you can snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Hello, friends. Welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are just closing out really quickly with some reasons for why the Jets might not make the first round or two of the playoffs. We know that Winnipeg has at least clinched a wild card appearance, but past that, the rounds after that are going to be really tough for the Jets, right? Even the first round is going to be pretty brutal, especially with how this team has been. I think there are three reasons as to why they might not advance, and the first one is if HelloFresh is mortal. I know that I said HelloFresh is the main reason the Jets probably will advance, but he might also be the reason that they don't get very far if he looks even remotely average. I know that sounds very silly, but this team kind of goes the way HelloFresh goes. I know that that's true of many goalies out there, but HelloFresh in particular has this uncanny ability to paper over many of Winnipeg's biggest problems. That there's like a second reason that I'm kind of thinking of, and HelloFresh can negate that second reason if he is in like the peak form, Vezina caliber play that we're used to with him. But the second reason the Jets might not make the rounds after the first round, or getting too far through the postseason, is because they just don't score enough. Winnipeg recently has found a little bit more of a vein of scoring, but beyond that, the historical records for how the Jets have been this season, especially finishing-wise, have been poor. We know that the Jets at times have missed empty nets. Sometimes they don't even get the puck on the net. It's just been a bit of a mess, and it feels like Winnipeg skaters at times have been inside their own heads. Now, the good news is it's been changing a little bit recently, so maybe Winnipeg is regressing a little bit in terms of the finishing ability at just the right time, finally exiting the goal-scoring drought that has frankly plagued this team for like the last 3 months. It's not going to be the end of all of it, but it might be a little bit better than what we're used to seeing, at least with the past few months of the regular season. I think the big question is, who are the Jets going to face in net, and can Winnipeg get past those defenses? If they can, the goal scoring probably won't be as big of an issue. Neither the Oilers nor the Knights have the world's best starters in net, but at least, they could be decent enough to give the Jets some problems and make it hard for a team that doesn't exactly have the world's best finishing talent to find the back of the net a little more frequently. So, yeah, fun stuff there. Now, I have one more reason as to why I think the Jets might not get very far, and it really comes down to the power play. I've talked about special teams in the past being a major problem, and the power play for Winnipeg, despite the addition of Ehlers, continues to look very out of sync. One thing that I don't really understand is why the Jets skaters are just so bad at passing. We often see them make really bad passes, really poor decisions, very bad turnovers. It's always in dangerous areas, and I don't understand why the Jets try and force stuff. It feels like sometimes Winnipeg's power play gets a lot of tunnel vision, and when it does, a lot of guys stop skating, there's not as much puck movement, and that scoring immediately declines. We had a stretch for a while there where the Jets' power play was like 1 or 2 for 25 or something, which is pretty darn dismal when you've got Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers, Pierre-Luc Dubois, all of these top talents and names on your team in your top 6 getting power play minutes. The fact that the Jets haven't really been scoring that much with the man advantage, that's a really big problem, especially when you're in the postseason and you're facing an opponent that you're going to see for the next several games. You're not going to have as much variance and variety in terms of what might work against your opponent. So if your power play isn't cooking and you're struggling to score at even strength, you're going to be in a really big pickle really quickly. And I think for the Jets, finding a way to make the top power play unit sing just a little bit more would be a huge, huge help, especially against a team like Edmonton, where the Jets are probably going to have to score like 7 a game at this rate in order to keep up with them. But Let me know what you think of these reasons for the Jets to advance and throughout the postseason, or reasons why you think that they're not going to get very far. Drop your own reasons for both in the comments below or at my social medias at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. For tonight's episode, though, that is going to be all the time that we have. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen today, every day. Now make your second listen Game to Game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, and every result featuring expert analysis from our local podcasters, all available only through the Locked On Network. They bring you all of the biggest stories and insights from around the NHL, and you can find Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Subscribing is free, so do so right now, please. And as always, really, really love and appreciate your support, and we hope we will see you tomorrow. Thanks for making us, again, your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee. I'll see you tomorrow. Go Jets, go.